What is going on, everybody? Welcome into another edition of the Daily Energy Newsbeat Stand-Up here on this gorgeous Monday, September 11th, 2023. As always, I am your humble correspondent, Michael Tanner, coming to you from an undisclosed location here in Dallas, Texas, joined by the executive producer of the show, the purveyor of the show, and the director and publisher of the world's greatest website, EnergyNewsbeat.com, Stuart Turley. My man, how we doing today?
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood, Michael. We're going to have a lot of fun.
We are. I appreciate you coming over this weekend, help me get moved into the new studio here. I am fired up and ready to go. You'll probably see a few tweaks going on behind me, but we'll dial it in, guys, for you, the viewer. But we have an absolutely banger of a show lined up. Did not stop Stu from going absolutely crazy this week. He also held down the fort the last 2 days, so we got an absolutely wild one and a big one lined up. First up, why Saudi Arabia and Russia are continuing with oil production cuts. Probably the biggest news last week caused oil to go absolutely crazy. We will cover everything Saudi Arabia, OPEC, and production cuts. We'll then kick it over. Biden does also something fairly crazy. He cancels those previously issued ANWR oil and gas leases. That's up in Alaska. So remember that Willow project? No more now. So we'll cover, talk about the energy and oil and gas crisis. Two large stories coming to move prices, which really, in my opinion, was the biggest story of last week as we sit here over $87, even seeing $88. We did also have some interesting abroad stories. Western sanctions begin to start failing as the EU begins to import more Russian gas, and China continues to beat the U.S. in the tech war. As always, Stu keeps it scary. And then we'll come back home. 3 members of the Louisiana Public Service Commission punt on protecting our power grid from foreign threats. ERCOT goes ahead here in Texas, moves out of emergency operations, thank goodness, still asks for conservation. Not in this apartment, I will tell you that much. And then finally, quickly, Dutch police use water cannon to detain 2,400 climate activists. Looks like a summer backyard party. A great cover photo. Unfortunately, I won't be able to unsee it. And then Stu will kick it over to me. I'll quickly cover what's going on in the finance realm. Again, we saw oil above $87. I'll kind of break that down from a few different vantage points. And then finally, we saw last week while I was on leave here, Magnolia Oil and Gas goes ahead and acquires Giddings Oil and Gas, which is about 5,000 BOE per day. So we'll kind of break what that means in context to a lot of different stuff. And then we'll let you guys get out of here and get back to work on this Monday. Before we do all that, guys, as always, the stories and analysis you are about to hear are brought to you by the world's greatest website, EnergyNewsbeat.com, the best place for all of your energy news. Stu and the team does a great job of curating that site to make sure it's up to speed in real time with everything you need to know to stay up to speed on the energy business. You can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can interact and subscribe on YouTube at Energy Newsbeats. That's one of the best ways to support the show. So we appreciate everybody who's gone and subscribed. And if you haven't, go do that now. You can interact with the show, questions at EnergyNewsbeat.com. You can check out our new data product dashboard.energynewsbeat.com. It's kind of our data news combo, and which we're trying to push hard. Team is hard at work at V2, so we appreciate all the support there. But I'm out of breath though, Stu. We got an absolutely banger show. Where do we want to begin?
Hey, let's start with Saudi Arabia and Russia. I'm even do it without having an imitation of Putin today, so I know you'll be thrilled by that.
Hey.
Okay. So here we are. Why are Saudi Arabia and Russia continuing with oil production cuts? Michael, let's set the stage for a little bit of what just happened last week. Last week, there was a continuation of the cuts, extenuations last week from OPEC and OPEC Plus, despite, $1 million for Saudi Arabia through the end of 2023. Barrel per day, 1 million barrel per day cuts through the end of the year. Moscow's doing 300,000 barrels per day through the end of the year. Both said last week those are going to be reviewed every month, and both of them in that article last week were a slap to Biden. So it was kind of like all of a sudden, wait a minute. Now there's an analysis coming out of Riyadh saying that there may be an underlying current, Michael, for continuing the reviewing. And we're going to get more information on that as we get rolling along.
You mean the revision downward?
Yes. This is all dependent on whether or not Biden toes the line. And if they are now trying to hit him in the head, there's more to this story coming out.
So you think this is all political? This is not a just pure financial move in order to strengthen what may or may not be a possible IPO of Saudi Aramco, as we've discussed on the show at nauseam.
Absolutely, is what, 50 billion in that new IPO or whatever
Yes.
the number
Break their
is.
old record. No, break their old record of 25.9.
Right. And here's why that they're still going to keep that up. This is more of an affront to Biden, because Biden is now, let's take a look at what came out. Janet Yellen, 3 or 4, when she started last year to do the SPR, Michael, she went to China and asked China, can we release all of this oil out of the SPR? They have no more oil out of the SPR to help reduce the prices. Well, guess what's happening? This is a punishment because now Biden's in a pickle. He can't replenish the SPR. He has no arrows to do before the next election. Here's the next squirrel on this analysis, Michael. We just had Russia is now reducing all of their refined products coming out of diesel. The EU and the Northeast are going to get hurt by diesel. All of this is back to Putin being mad at the U.S. All interesting.
It's really interesting, and it's fascinating to me that on two levels you can make a decision. I mean, it's the classic two birds, one stone, because I think we're both right on both accounts. I think your analysis is correct that Saudi Arabia is probably is not necessarily pumped with the Biden administration for a variety of reasons. They probably want Trump back in office for a variety of reasons. But I also think there's definite some financial gains. I mean, $100 Brent oil makes an IPO of Saudi Aramco pretty attractive. So I think it's a case of both. They shelled out a lot of money in their Saudi investment funds, both on the soccer front. We've seen what they've done with the Live Golf merger in PGA. So if they ever have time they need cash, it's now, and they see an opportunity to both hurt the Biden administration and make more money. It's, as Michael Scott would say, win, win, win. Not for the U.S., though. Who gets hurt? You, the consumer, because gas prices are going up, up, up.
And it's going to go up. Michael, let me throw this financial piece at you. I want to ask your opinion on this. We have $7.6 trillion in interest-bearing U.S. Public debt will mature within a year. Don't you think Saudi is looking at that, knowing that we are going to be in financial squirrel fest coming up? Do you think that has anything to play with it? I personally think it does, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think they're, what's interesting is, and when I was talking with somebody about this late last week, is people always, MBS should love, in an ideal world, the Saudis should love a democratic regime, because a democratic regime over the last 30 years has produced the largest spikes in oil prices and probably the majority of the oil wealth that's existed. I mean, think about what oil was during the Bush administration, what oil was during the Trump administration. Oil was so low, Trump had to fly to West Texas to go on a rig to try to say that he supported the oil and gas business. There was like 3 rigs running at $20 oil. So yes, love me some Trump, don't get me wrong, but they're not great for oil prices. So there's that squirrel that goes into it, is that normally you would think a Saudi regime would love a democratic president, if only because the sentiment around a democratic leadership is we're going to need less oil, and AKA prices go up. So it's very interesting on one hand, where you like the democratic administration if you're overseas or if you're in the Saudi government, but then you also don't for other reasons, because probably what Biden is doing that is causing MBS to not like him has nothing to do with oil, and probably everything to do with a lot of what's going on probably behind the scenes, black ops, all that stuff that I don't even want to get into.
Nope, neither do I.
But you see what I mean? It's interesting.
Absolutely. And one of the things, Michael, that people are asking me about, the advantage of it, Energy Newsbeat, is I look at all types of energy articles, and there's a lot of back players behind the scenes. And if you just read one article, that's not the whole story. You got to read about 30.
You have to. All right, let's move up to Alaska. This is, I think, another crazy oil story that I think blends into why we saw a dramatic spike in prices this week.
Now, Michael, I want to ask you this one after let me go ahead and get started on this. Biden cancels previously issued Anwar oil and gas leases in Alaska. If I had a chicken, this chaps it, and it would be 24 hours. He announced he was canceling all previously oil and gas leases in Alaska's Anwar. Saudi Arabia and Russia announced oil production limits would continue. Wow. Where's that one? That goes with our previous article. You sit back and kind of go, look, only 24 hours before Joe announced he was canceling all of those, Saudi Arabia and Russia announced they would limit their productions. Is there a correlation?
No, I think this is and I think I flubbed. I don't think this has much to do with the Willow Project. And I think what you're seeing is this cancellation of these Arctic refuge oil and gas leases as oil gets to $100 probably means the Biden administration saw if oil gets to $100, people are going to want to drill this. And we can't allow this to be drilled or else we're going to absolutely get slaughtered by our underlings. Remember, he's running for president here and he's got to show his base who there are people much left of him trying to run. And if you're on the Democratic side, you probably think Biden is too far to the right. I mean, that's weird for us to think about, but think about some of the stuff that Biden has done. He's actually approved, again, that Willow Project, which he got absolutely slaughtered for doing that. So I think this is a olive branch in the other direction saying, holy smokes, if oil does become $100, there's a good chance this stuff may or may not get developed. It's already been leased. We better go ahead and revoke this before anybody gets too spicy out there. And kind of as a olive branch toad as he begins to really enter campaign mode. And I think you're going to see a lot more of this happen going forward, as in, as we get closer and closer to the election, I think you're going to start seeing him shift farther and farther to the left in order to appeal to everybody in his base, or so I think. And I think this is step one specifically on energy. But this doesn't do anything to help the supply shortage that is suspected to be coming. Again, this is why we're seeing prices so high. So it's a pretty crazy move.
It is, but let me throw this at you. Here's a quote in here. And as the climate crisis warms the Arctic more than twice as far as the rest of the world, we have a responsibility to protect this treasured region for all ages, Biden says. This is a farce. The East Coast and the whole, everybody's buying Russian Arctic natural gas, LNG. And this is a farce. You want to say that at least we do it ecologically, correct?
Ecologically. We got to put that on a t-shirt. We do it ecologically. I'm not sure if that's a word, but I absolutely love it. Put that in Webster's. What's next?
Okay, let's go to the next one. This one, Western sanctions are failing. Surprise. EU imports more Russian gas and China beats U.S. in the tech war. There's some interesting points in here. It really is pointing out the number of countries under the EU, UN, or U.S. trade sanctions since 1960 through 1922. They really started kicking in under Trump, but boy, when Biden got in, it was like they have continued to weaponize it. Let's come into here. Now, what happened under Trump's sanctions, Michael?
Nothing really.
The U.S. was now revered because he picked his battles. He did not just go willy-nilly out there and start throwing sanctions. He used sanctions and targeted responses. And then if you take a look, China has the world's largest economy when you measure its GDP purchasing power, and Russia has the sixth biggest economy. Those two animals together are pretty crazy. Now, China is advancing technology despite our sanctions. Sanctions don't work. They're going to steal from us no matter what happens, Michael.
Well, of course. I mean, they're the largest purveyor of intellectual property theft in the world. So I mean,
Oh yeah. And so Bloomberg now put out that the Mate 60 Pro is always Yahweh's first phone to use the most advanced
Huawei.
Yahweh.
Should we go to Huawei phones? Should Energy Newsbeat go to Huawei phones?
I'll go to a Tesla phone. I'm all in. I think Tesla phones would be great.
Okay. What do you think? What's that got to do with a Huawei phone?
I ain't using it.
Exactly. It doesn't have a CCP chip in it.
I don't know that the Apple chip is any better than the CCP, because I know that the Biden administration.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trusting Apple over Huawei. I'll just say it.
Oh, I would too. Let's go to the next one here. 3 members of the Louisiana Public Service Commission punt on protecting our power grid from foreign threats. This one is
Sweet.
real. It's
Sweet.
like, holy, yeah, nice. We got a real problem here. And Michael, you and I both have been laughing. We've been in Texas, and boy, ERCOT's just pulling themselves silly trying to protect our grid and keep everybody in line. But last month, the Louisiana Public Service Commissioner Eric Scamerta, I guess is how you pronounce it. How do you butcher a Louisiana name from a guy from Texas? Huh? Could be. Scamerta's proposal echoed Texas Lone Star Infrastructure Protection Act of 2021, which prohibits Texas business governments from contracting with entities owned or controlled by individuals from China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. This actually came out from a pretty cool group, the Center for Security Policy Org. And this is really interesting from the standpoint. I've asked their CEO to come over and visit on the podcast as well, too. The discovery of malicious Chinese malware embedded in the deep inside networks of the power grid. This group was just punting. They didn't want to even follow along. There's even evidence that it's all this malware is in our grid, and they didn't want to stop it in Louisiana. Foster Kimball's vote no is hardly a surprise. His district is home to Barksdale Air Force Base.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Barksdale Air Force Base is the home of the 8th Air Force.
If we're allowing China to build our critical infrastructure, I'm sorry. I mean, I know they're listening in on this conversation, but that's a crime and a half to allow a foreign adversarial government to build and implant malware into critical systems. I mean, they're getting so far as to just fly balloons over us. They really don't care anymore.
No. And Foster Campbell's vote no is a surprise. Barksdale Air Base is the 8th Air Force. Michael, do you know what the 8th Air Force is? The 8th Air Force is the same Air Force that saved everybody from the Germans. They bombed the snot out of the Germans. Now, my dad was chief of staff of the 8th Air Force. I like Barksdale. Barksdale's cool, but it's a military base under attack from China. Anyway, I got all worked up on
But let's put more malware in there.
Oh, but it's the whole grid, Michael. It's the
brutal
grid.
Speaking of a sweet grid, let's talk about ERCOT.
Hey, I put on here, and this is just a real quick story. Really, really quick. They just finished they moved out of the emergency operations center. They were at a level 2, I believe it was. What was their level? Emergency. They still asked for conservation from everybody. It was the end of the emergency alert 2 had been issued. It was the first time since the 2021 storm.
So now we can go back to cranking up our ACs. I mean, I never stopped here. I dial everything up, fire it all up. I'm running quick.
Well, and you should. You and your dog have the same fur coat. When we sit here and we take a look at ERCOT, why is ERCOT having problems? It's because we have no wind and the solar generation is not working right now. Right now, as of September 10th, at when we're filming this, it is 12,000 megawatts of solar. 10,000 megawatts of solar, 10,000 megawatts of wind, and 22,000 of natural gas, 5,000 of coal, and 5,000 of nuclear. We'd be dead meat without the fossil fuels.
We would. I mean, it's doing, it's doing like exactly over, about more than half of all electrical generation. I mean, solar and wind does have a large current capacity to produce. Again, the problem is it's variable. And when you look at things like natural gas and nuclear on that list, Stu, they're the only things that are base load energy. I would not build base load energy, any building baseload energy on anything but natural gas or nuclear. Now, what I would do was install backup grid generation on my house, maybe buy some solar panels on my roof, and have a small little backup generator in order to tap into that if, say, I was buying energy on the spot market and want to do not for a given period.
I would love me some solar. Here's my reason for not buying solar and putting them on my house.
You're hydro, right? Or you are.
But no, I still want that backup. Here's the thing. I don't want to put solar panels on my house until they are recyclable. Right now, solar panels last between 5-10 years. They are not recyclable, period. Yes. Oh, you can recycle them, but the economics are cheaper to throw them on a boat and send them to Africa. And they just pile them up and they're awful. So as soon as I don't want to be hypocritical. All right, let's go to our last story here. Oh, by the way, on the Michael, on the Energy Newsbeat top menu bar, we've got the link to the ERCOT dashboard so people can just kind of quickly check in every once in a while on that.
Yes.
Let's go to the Dutch police use water cannon to detain 24,000 climate activists. I think it looked like a summer backyard party. Now, do you recognize the guy in the front there? Does that look like a Connor on drugs or something? I'm just kidding. But when we go in and we take a look at police deployed water cannons to disperse thousands of climate activists protesting on a highway in the Netherlands to demand an end of government subsidies for the fossil fuel industry. Michael, this really gets me worked up. More than 10,000, but they detained 24,000. Here's why. The protesters are claiming that there is 37.5 billion euros, almost 45 billion in dollars in subsidies in the Netherlands going to the shipping industry. That is not subsidies to the fossil fuels. These people are chowderheads, Michael. They are chow with climate. I wonder if any of those left-wing folks are paying for this. Michael, we are starting a brand new water cannon ourselves for Energy Newsbeat. Okay. I'm holding up our latest water cannon edition. Okay.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, yeah. Here we go. Boo, 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 boo. The white Energy Newsbeat ENB is going to be available for sale on the website. For sale. Our water cannons to put away any objection.
On our merch website that doesn't exist. Yes, right. You can buy it. merch.energynewsbeat.com.
What a bunch of chowderheads. I'm sorry. I get work.
Absolutely funny. But it does look like a block party I would like to go to. So next time they have one of these, I would love the direction. Stu, you got anything else for us on the news side?
That was all fun.
Well, I'll finish up, guys. As always, I was out those last 2 days, so there's a couple things I want to cover. I mean, mainly the big news of oil prices last week was we finished the week on a 9-month high on worries about tight supply. On Friday specifically, we were almost up 1%, but that brought us to about a 9-month high, mainly off the back of the two articles we covered at the beginning of this show, which was the Saudi Arabian and Russia continuance of their oil cuts, and then the Biden cancellation of these Arctic leases. Again, it all comes down to the sentiment around, will there be oil available as prices rise? Remember, more oil and gas reserves get unlocked, the higher oil prices go. Obviously, there's stuff that's deeper. There's stuff, uneconomical oil becomes more economical. Trust me, it's part of my day job. I run these numbers every day. It's a miracle what $5 will do to an oil and gas project, especially if it's on the ropes or not. And management teams love, just give me it on today's price tag. It's not how it works, though. So I digress a little bit. My point being, as we creep closer to this $100 number, or really 90 if you're talking about WTI, it's going to be interesting to see the projects what that rig count does. Because remember, Stu, we had rig counts happen last week, and let me pull that up. But rig counts were only up 1 considering this insane move. Now, again, you usually see about a 3-month lag with rig counts. We're currently sitting, again, 632. That's only up 1 from last week, but it's down 127 from last year. And oil prices were about the same as they are now. That's the funny part, Stu. So to give you an idea, that's the lag on rigs. Now, this was coming down, last year around this time, oil over the summer was $100. We saw $120 at one point for oil prices. So obviously there's going to be a little bit of a lag, but it's going to be interesting to see how rig counts moving forward go. And I think quarter 4, quarter 1 would be my prediction for a lot of these rig service companies when, if you're going to start, we don't give investment advice here, but if you're looking at, allocating some of your portfolio away from E&P and into the service companies, because remember, as oil prices go higher, service companies are more sensitive to oil prices. So if you're bullish on oil, one of the best things to do is find a pure oil player, get out of Exxon, get out of Chevron, get out of Shell, get into a completely independent operator, or go heavy on a rig contractor. I mean, there's a few out there right now, maybe even a frac company. I don't know. We don't give investment advice here because we're idiots. But it's something I would necessarily take a look at. This happened on Thursday or I think it was Wednesday, actually. But Magnolia Oil and Gas came out and announced their acquisition of Giddings. I'll kind of read the headline. The transaction highlights here. This enhances, gives them about 48,000 net acres. 96% of that is operated with about a 91% working interest. Brings Magnolia's total to over 500,000 acres. High margin production, they claim. This is all, again, Gulf Coast pricing, so you get a nice little premium up down there. I've seen that firsthand. It's nice. I wish I had 5,000 barrels a day like Magnolia now does on that pricing. One of my favorite words, immediately accretive to key financial metrics. I saw somebody tweet this last week. I forget who it was, but it was a great tweet. It was like, accretive is the best word of all time. Dropped a rig, it's accretive to cash flow. Got a rig, it's accretive to production. You can literally use it in any realm to make anything sound good. So in this case, this acquisition is accretive to key financial metrics. This was valued at 2.9 times estimated 2024 EBITDA, which is actually pretty big considering some of the numbers we've seen in the low 2s. This 2.9, do we see a 3? I mean, again, as we move up towards this 85, 90 million or $90 oil, these EBITDA numbers are going to go up. To give you an idea, the cash outlay at closing is $260 million, which could also be an additional $40 million based upon future commodity pricing. These are all Eagle Ford, Austin Chalk locations, and they're kind of folded right in terms of, it's a really nice development program that Giddings had that's going on right now that's going to be able to merge closely according to them. So, decent for Magnolia. Again, if oil prices continue to rise, this will be a extremely attractive price that they got it at only 2.9 times that 2024 EBITDA. As we see oil prices creep up, it'd be interesting to see how big those numbers get. Are we going to get back into the 3s, back into the 4s? Who knows? Somebody will, though. Somebody will make a killing on this, and it will probably be those double eagle guys who have sold out 6 times. They're working on number 7. I miss anything, Stu? What else should we be worried about?
Well, other than our debt coming up, the 7.2 trillion coming due, nothing.
What's that 7.2? Is that credit card debt? What's that?
That's government debt.
I thought it was like 30 trillion.
I got it right here. It's 7.6 trillion of U.S. debt is coming due in the next 8 months.
Sweet. Yep. Well, that'll be
it's within the next year.
Right. Open up your checkbooks, baby. Open up your checkbooks.
Oh, what's a few trillion?
Yeah, who's got it? So, anything else, Stu? What should people be worried about this week outside of the debt?
No, just buckle up. The heat wave is broken. We're gonna have some nice weather coming.
It was. I don't know if it's gonna get. I'm not familiar with Texas summers, but today and yesterday were some of the first days that I wasn't dying outside. So, if it could stay like this, I will survive. So with that, guys, hope you have a great Monday. We appreciate you checking us out. Yeah, you can survive this week. If you've got meetings, I know you do. It's okay. Don't bang your head out. You'll be able to get through it. And sooner or later, we'll get you through this week. We will be with you this entire week, the full team, to keep you up to speed on everything with the energy business, guys. But we'll let you get out of here, get back to work. For Stuart Turley, I'm Michael Tanner. We'll see you tomorrow, folks.